Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, please note an automatic external defibrillator is available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. We'll begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha, Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, September 10th, 2013. And B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, September 24th, 2013 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property.
Motion to approve A and B.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to resolutions. There are 4 resolutions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
We have one appeal, item H, appeal of rejection of homestead exemption for Jacqueline Headed at 3988 Iowa Street, Omaha, Nebraska 68112. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Goodwillie, Douglas County Assessor's Office. In this situation, Ms. Headed was in the homestead program in years 2011 and prior. She has also applied, and we have recommended approval to the state of Nebraska for 2013. This appeal is for tax year 2012. We received no application within the time deadlines on 2012. We did receive an application here in September of 2013 for year 2012. My understanding from Ms. Headed is that she had some transportation issues, was unable to get the application filed, and in fact called our office in June of 2012 seeking another application. We mailed that out, but we never received it. She's indicated that she mailed it at the Florence Post Office, but like I say, we never received it. The earliest we've received an application for 2012 is September of this year. In reviewing the application she did file, we do think she'd qualify, at least insofar as our review of the process goes. So she's here. I don't know if you want to ask her any questions or she would like to speak, but I think that's, did I accurately summarize that?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you. What is the will of the board?
I would move for the approval of the appeal.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you for being here, Mrs. Headed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Please vote. Oh, sorry, I said that.
I always wait for you,
I
Madam Chair.
said it, I was like, okay.
You may want to debate it.
It just all went so far, so fast. Agenda for the Douglas County Noxious Weed Control Authority.
Motion passes.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha, Madam Chair.
Here, item 1, approval of the minutes of the Noxious Weed Control Authority meeting held on Tuesday, August 13, 2013.
Motion approved.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Noxious Weed Control Authority Board about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have one resolution placing special assessments on property in Douglas County. And
Second.
are there any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
We'll move to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle, Commissioner Duda, Commissioner Kraft, Commissioner Morgan, Commissioner Rogers, Commissioner Tusha. Madam Chair.
Here, item A, approval of minutes of Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, September 10th, 2013, and item B, approval of claims submitted for payment processed through Tuesday, September 17th, 2013.
Motion to approve A and B.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Consent agenda, there's a total of 12 items, A through L.
Motion approved.
Any questions or comments on consent? Please vote.
Motion passes.
Citizen comments, is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the board about an item not on the agenda? Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning. Laura McCormick, 336 Beverly. The reason I'm here today is to find out what I need to do to formally complain about a Douglas County employee named Douglas Johnson. He's the district court administrator. And the reason why I'm here, it's come to my attention that Mr. Johnson has taken it upon himself to communicate with a number of people in county and I don't know what other types of government about myself. He evidently is making assertions that I was spotted in Douglas County district courtrooms taking photos, which is a violation of local court rule 47B. Doug wanted to let this individual he was talking to know that if I intend to show these pictures at the county board meeting, that would be a further violation as the photos would be broadcast not only to the county board but also on Cox. And then there's also, for my convenience, a reference to Court Rule 47, which pertains to courtroom decorum. Now, I have a number of problems with this. Number one, I was never in the courtroom taking pictures. I really don't know what you do about employees who engage in this kind of behavior, but I'd like to find out. And I'm here formally asking, Madam Chair, what shall I do? Who does this person report to? And how can it be that he can go around and make these types of comments about citizens and engage in character assassination? I take my reputation quite seriously. I hope you understand. So please tell me what I should do about this problem. And for the record, I would like this to be part of the record.
I would assume, and Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think any complaint on court employees would go to Judge Havigan?
Does it go to a Supreme Court? Janice Walker?
Well, that could be. You could.
Well, because here's my understanding. Doug Johnson, I believe, is paid for by Douglas County. I believe we also pay for Ray Curtis. And now Leslie Douglas, she's the one who I think has the drunk boyfriend and calls judges to get special favors. I think she, though, reports to the state.
Disparage people like that.
Oh, well, it was in the newspaper, sir.
Okay,
I don't
let's
care.
get back to
I don't care.
issue.
No, I want to speak.
Let's get back.
I don't
Mark,
care
no.
if it is
Mark, stop.
in the newspaper. You always take the opportunity to smash somebody's character like that. This is not the forum for it.
Okay, let's stop. You want to know where to file a complaint.
Wait,
the complaint.
Can I please speak?
No,
Mr.
Laura, let's not get.
You do that all
let's
the
not-
time.
Mark, stop. Let's not do that. Let's just find out where do you file the complaint for what she's wanting to know.
Teresa, York County Attorney's Office. I believe, Ms. McCormick, that you would speak with the presiding judge at the district court. I believe that that's who Mr. Johnson answers to.
Okay, because in addition to that problem, the other problem that I have is it is quite common, unfortunately, for citizens who would like information, like let's say you're in juvenile court and you're trying to understand what hearings are going to be held today. Because let's say hypothetically I'm being asked by some other citizen who would like to come and observe, which is our right under the law. If you try to communicate with a court administrator, they don't respond. They don't answer emails, they don't answer telephone calls, they just don't respond. So I'm not really sure that I understand what to do about those types of problems. Is that another situation where I need to talk to somebody that works in the courts, or what am I supposed to do about that? Or do I talk to Patrick Bloomingdale? Who do I talk to?
Don't they publish the court schedule?
Teresa, you're at County Attorney's Office. If I understand the question correctly, you want to know the schedule in juvenile court?
Yes.
And you have contacted
Ray Curtis. See, this is, I'll give you a for instance. For instance, I'm actually there. I'm not even on the telephone. I'm in juvenile court. And someone will contact me and say, I'm really interested. I would like to come and observe. And I say, okay, text back. Okay, great. I'll find out when the schedule is. I walk over to where the court administrator's office is and try to get information, and they will not, they don't answer questions. And that's my dilemma. And so then if I've been told, well, it's on the website, and I say, well, really, I can't find it. Help me. Here, I've got it right here. Let's see if we can figure this out. Non-communicative. So it seems to me, just in my experience asking questions about the courts, that, and if we talk about Leslie Douglas, I mean, I've tried to access public records that she keeps locked in her office. I really don't know why she keeps public records locked in her office, but she does. And then when you have dialogues and conversations with her about, well, you know, I need to better understand this, can you show me the policy or can you give me this record? She just says, no, I don't have to.
Well, Laura, here's what I'll do. Afterwards here, I'll work with Teresa to try to figure out what the right chain of command is, and we'll get that to you. Because off the top of our heads, I think we're saying that you should write to the presiding judge of each of those courts. And if that's not the case, if there's no answer, then you would go to that next step, and that would be, you're correct, that Janice Walker, but you could carbon Judge Hevikin, who's the Supreme Court judge. So let's just double check. Let me talk to Teresa after the meeting and make sure we have a good chain of command outline, and then I'll get that to you.
Okay, and I appreciate that. That really helps me. It does. But I think it's important, the last thing I want to say is, you know, I'm just a citizen. I'm just a van driving soccer mom, as I say all the time. Mr. Kraft, I'm not an elected official, and I don't work for the county government. And so I think it is troubling when people are spreading lies and rumors about me, and they get paid tax dollars. I'm not really sure what all this is about. I don't really understand why that's happening, and I don't know who I complain to.
Okay, well, we'll find out for sure for you.
Because I do want to lodge a formal complaint.
Right.
Okay.
No, I get it. I get it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle?
Laura, I was only going to add that the county government pays the salaries under state law to these state employees, but we have no control over them. And so I think what the advice you're getting from Commissioner Borgeson is right on point. And I'll tell you the truth, you have a terrific asset in Commissioner Borgeson. She'll follow through and get you the information you want. And she can also really serve as a buffer so that she can get the information that you want. You can make inquiries of her that, you know, really, you really can't make of other people, or else you won't get responses from them sometimes. And lastly, I'd like to say sometimes the information that you want is of a confidential nature, particularly when it comes to juveniles. So while there are some lists of who's there, it gets a little bit dicey sometimes when trying to find out more information. But I definitely would urge you to do what you just did and work with Commissioner Borgeson. That's really a good approach.
Thank you. No other citizen comments. We'll move to public hearings. The first hearing is to set the final tax rate for 2013-14. This public hearing was carried over from last week, and after the public hearing is closed, if we so choose to close it today, we can take action. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on the public hearing for setting the final tax rate for 2013-14.
6.
No questions or comments. I will close the public hearing. What is the will of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have a comment. I was thinking about this last night.
Sure.
Doing some reading.
Motion passes.
Sorry. Thank you. Our budget passed, my recollection is, once again on a 4-3 vote. And I think it demonstrates how government should work. We're not perfect. But I was reading about again, another article about what's going on the national level. And actually, it was the editorial in the World Herald that really made me think about these things, that talked about how things used to be, although there have been some hellacious fights over the period of our time and disagreements. I mean, the Civil War was not exactly a board game. But I think it points out, and the editorial really hit the nail on the head, that there's a time to govern and set aside differences. And I didn't get my way on that budget. I'll tell you the truth, I think every one of us could have come up with a way to balance that budget individually. It's just that we had to get a few other votes. And I voted to raise taxes. I didn't want to. Nobody on this board who did wanted to. But I just want to interject that, I hope Lee Terry and others are listening to us, that there are ways to compromise. It's not a bad word. We need to keep things moving, get the best we can, and then try to get something better next time. So that editorial to me was right on point.
Very good comments. Thank you. The next public hearing is the Douglas County Subdivision Regulation Text Amendments to Section 13, Application Requirements and Process, Subsection 7, Waivers and Exceptions. The Planning Board Commission conducted a public hearing on August 14, 2013, and recommend approval on a 6-0 vote. After the public hearing, this board may take action if they so desire. Good morning.
Good morning. Doug Kent Holm, Director of Environmental Services for Douglas County. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Doug Cook, our Planning and Zoning Coordinator. This is his first time that he's been able to present an item to you, so I wanted to introduce him, and he will take it away from here.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Please excuse my nerves.
Now, I happen to know you have experience with the Washington County Board, and surely we're not as intimidating as they are.
I'll take the fifth on that one.
Excuse our nerves, too.
Yeah. Well, I'm here today to talk to you about amendments to our county subdivision regulations, specifically as relates to the movement of property lines. These revisions came to be as a result of an issue that was brought to us by the public and then upon further review of this section by staff. The goal on all the revisions has been to, 1, lessen an unnecessary burden on the county's property owners, while continuing to protect the public interest. 2 is to streamline the procedure whereby property owners can adjust an interior line in a subdivision, combine 2 or more lots in a subdivision, merge platted lots and unplatted parcels, or adjust a property line involving unplatted parcels of real estate, all to be done administratively. And then finally, to provide a benefit to the public and the county through a savings of time, a savings of money, and a savings of resources. The savings for the county come from not requiring the costs involved in public hearings, and freeing up the Planning Commission and you to more important matters. Public benefits include the all-important time factor, where now it may take 2.5 months. This process will narrow that down to a matter of days. It's important to know that safeguards are in place. The planning administrator, the county engineer's office, and the county attorney's office must sign any surveys, in addition to the standard signers such as the owner and the treasurer. Additionally, if any of the requests involve the dedication of a county road right-of-way, that procedure cannot be done administratively, and will have to go through the public hearing process in front of the Planning Commission and you. There is also an appeal process. I do have slides or pictures if you'd like to see specific examples that have been brought to our attention just in the last few months. Staff has actively solicited the comments of Deputy County Attorney Bernie Monbouquet and Jeff Schursberg and Bob Buglowitz from the Engineer's Office. And for the record, I would like to thank them for their assistance. In conclusion, the Planning Commission recommended approval of these text changes on a unanimous 6-0 vote, and we ask that you concur with that recommendation.
Since you have the slide here, can you just give us an example of
Absolutely.
what we're looking at here?
Okay. All right, this first example, we are in a subdivision here. This would be a case where this property owner, let's say he wants to grab, or he wants to have these trees on his property as kind of like a shelter belt. So he buys this property. So one of the procedures, this would be a lot consolidation, is he would, in effect, delete this line between these two lots, and those two lots would be combined into one. So that would be an example of a lot consolidation. That now has to go through the Planning Commission and you. Now, there is no additional county road dedication. Those roads were platted. They met the county requirement when they were platted. So this proposal takes the public hearings away and allows it to be done administratively.
Commissioner Boyle, did you have a question about that?
I do. Does it, first of all, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And you're doing great. You're doing great. I'm curious, does this have any effect, for example, on Greenbelt? Can this person suddenly, does this affect his tax status and now he can claim some kind of Greenbelt or some other status? Does this give him an advantage that's unforeseen?
Did not deal with that at all.
Commissioner Kent Holm, Environmental Services Director, doesn't change the zoning at all. So, I mean, if there were a Greenbelt issue there, there would have to be some zoning change, I believe, that would come into play there.
I'm not so sure because we give. I'm not so sure about that because we've. Majority of this board has given Greenbelt to homeowners that have 10 acres of property who claim they mow their lawn, sell it for alfalfa and all that sort of stuff.
Correct.
So I'm not sure zoning has much to do with it. I'm not really sure.
This has to fit within since this is a subdivision, and the subdivision by definition is going to be less than 20 acres, in some cases less than 10 acres. There are some provisions there that are going to come into place that are going to negate a Greenbelt designation.
Okay, well, I'd like you to talk to the assessor about the possibility of what the effect would be on people claiming Greenbelt as a result of something like this. I mean, I don't
we'll have that conversation.
Okay, that'd be helpful, and then let us know what he has to say. I do have other questions, but I can wait.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes. If at a later date they decide to reinstitute that line, what is the procedure there? Is it again administratively, or do they have to come before the boards?
Since there would be no additional dedication of the road, and provided there's not a building that crosses where the line used to be, then yes, that could go back.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duda?
I just wanted to say, and it's great to do a little more research on the Greenbelt question, good question, but I believe that any platted ground is automatically not eligible for Greenbelt. And so this ground was not eligible for Greenbelt before the lines changed and wouldn't be afterwards. It can't be platted and still be Greenbelted, I believe. But then I'm not the authority. We'll get the right answers. That's my understanding.
But any change in that, the Greenbelt portion would have to come back and be granted by this board. That couldn't be done administratively. That has to come to us. Commissioner Boyle, you had more questions?
Yes, I do. And I think that I'm thinking about, without naming names, because I have in the past, but people who have their homes on 10 acres or so who have Greenbelt status. And it did have to come to us, but they sure got approved. So I'm just thinking about that because it affects the income to the county, of course. But the other thing is, I've got some other things. What about Is there a regulation in here that some sort of thing like that, where you erase that line, that it cannot landlock other property owners?
Oh, yes. One of the safeguards is any of these procedures, there cannot be a violation of the zoning regulation.
Okay.
And the zoning does require that the lots have platted access.
Okay.
So that would be reviewed.
And what are we doing about notices if there's no public hearing? What kind of notice does the the landowner next door get?
There is no public notice because this is an administrative function.
So the neighbor over there at the left suddenly discovers that the guy to the right owns all the land around him, up next to him, and he didn't know anything about it.
Well, but when property buys and sells, I mean, neighbors are not notified.
Well, that's true, but there's an element of surprise in that, and I think particularly in rural areas that there's a lot of interest, should I say, in who owns what next door to whom. So I think that could be a time bomb. I think there ought to be, even though maybe it's not required, I think some form of notice, even if it's public on a sign that says notice this property is about to be annexed or sold or something, or, I think that might be something you might want to do because it could bring on a conversation. If nothing else, it might drive up the price of the land. Could I ask a question? Who wants this? Who wants these changes?
Well, this whole process was initiated by, and I'm not going to mention a name, but it was out in the rural area where they wanted to actually combine unplatted parcels. And the book was silent on that. So my interpretation was, since the book is silent, that must mean you can't do it. Well, that didn't seem fair. If a person has two unplatted, 20-acre parcels and they want to combine them into a 40, why should they not be allowed to do that? So that is what started the process.
Was it a landowner or a speculator?
It was a landowner.
Excuse me. Commissioner Ken Holm, Environmental Services Director. Commissioner Boyle, I am going to name names because I think it's relevant because if you recall, about a year and a half ago, there was a meeting out at our office.
Yes.
And you were present.
Right.
One of the property owners involved with that. This is a direct result of that.
Okay.
That process. And at that meeting, we indicated that we were going to look at the regulations and to see if we could do some things administratively, because it looked like there was an undue burden on having to go through this entire process when all we were trying to do was just adjust some lot lines.
Okay.
And in that case, that's the way we resolved that particular issue, allowed that individual to be able to go in and do the things that he wanted,
right,
knowing that this process was going to go through. And since then, we also, as Doug indicated, we went through and looked at some of the other aspects of these things where we're adjusting a lot line. There's not any other dedication. There's no zoning change. And it seemed like we were putting an undue burden on the property owners. And so we instead of just doing that one particular instance, we looked at it more comprehensively over that entire section of the regulations, and that's what's coming to you today. So we can make those adjustments. I appreciate your comments. We will go and look at those two things. We'll look at the notification thing. There's some things that we can do with signs. Maybe we can do that. We'll do that administratively as well, but we could potentially put a sign there. I don't know that that's really an undue burden on us or the property owner. So we'll take that, and certainly the greenbelt thing, we will note that in our administrative procedures, that if the actual property owner thinks that they can now get greenbelt out of it. Commissioner Duda is correct. Once a property land has been platted, it is not eligible for greenbelt. Now, what you're referring to on a 10-acre parcel, that's not gone through a subdivision process. And if that parcel was established years ago before some of these regulations took effect, then yes, they potentially could, because that's not a platted parcel. A platted parcel deals with a subdivision per se. A parcel of land out in the county could be 10 acres, could be a little larger than that, and if it's not been if it has not specifically gone through that subdivision process, then yes, potentially it could be greenbelt. But in these situations, we're not. We're talking about subdivisions.
My curiosity is piqued on that because I'm going to look into at least two pieces of property that are in a subdivision where most of the lots are 10 acres or more, and they're all, you wouldn't know one from the other. And there's a couple of them in there that have greenbelt, and they look like everybody else's. They're on a cul-de-sac, and I mean, how do they get that? So I'll look into that. That's not. The other deal, who would object to this?
We had no public at the Planning Commission meeting, and I don't know if anyone's going to speak on this tonight. But what's very interesting is that there probably is 3 or 4 surveyors that have contacted me that if you choose to send this forward, they are lining up to get to move lines around. So that's very encouraging.
So why would that be?
Because people want to combine their lots.
Do they want to develop them into housing?
No, mostly it's lot combinations, or one of them involves platted parcels, unplatted parcels, in which they just want to shift the lines around, which again, the book is silent on. Okay. So I've told people, well, I guess we don't have a procedure. That's a big part of this.
I'm used to going through these things that sound really terrific, and I think this is really terrific, except that 6 months from now somebody comes in and says, they're building a 64-story apartment building next door to my farm. I mean, something's going on, and I just don't want the other shoe to drop. We just had something the other day on something that came down from one of our departments. It sounded like, my God, we just reinvented sliced bread. Well, it turns out a couple holes in the bread. So that I wasn't told about, but somebody told me and let me know they weren't happy with it. So I don't want to have somebody call me in 6 months and say, "This confirms it, Mike, you're an idiot." So it might be Duda's voice. I'll record it. But that's all I'm really after, is just trying to really find out what it is. I think this seems to make a lot of sense, and I'm going to vote for it. But I get to be pretty cynical, I guess, and start to ask questions about who's benefiting, who really wants this, what can happen, how's this going to change things, all that sort of thing, and that's what I'm curious about. So, but I am going to vote for it. I think it's a good thing. Sorry to hammer you on your first appearance.
It's fine.
You're doing great.
These are great questions and comments.
Well, no, I just think with Commissioner Boyle, I think it's great that we're doing this. And I don't think your concern about them going out and building something on that is of concern, because they would have to go through the process if they're going to do that. Get a building permit, go through the whole planning thing. That's different than what we're talking about here. Yeah. So just erasing that line to combine those lots isn't going to trigger them to be able to go build something on it without going through the regular process that we have in place. So,
Mr. Borgeson, I know that, but once we do this, then what's our defense to stop it? I mean, if we do something that allows something that we're an unforeseen development, and they come to us and say, we really do want to put a 24-unit retirement home on the corner of this thing, and we say, well, you can't do that. Well, you just passed this, and it's part of the zoning thing now. I have a right to do this. I don't know. All I'm talking about is, okay, yeah. Like I said, I'm just too cynical on this stuff. So,
Madam Chairman, the key thing to remember here is these are text amendments to the subdivision regulations. These are not text amendments to the zoning. Right. And zoning talks about how many houses and how many apartments and off-street parking. And in just about all the cases with these text amendments, you are having the same or a lesser number of lots. Right. If you ever want to increase the number of lots, then the public hearings kick in, then the Planning Commission meets, forwards their recommendation to you.
For a development on it.
Correct.
Well, my point is, I'll try not to say much more. My point is, these things come in stages. They start out with something, and then pretty soon somebody says, my God, look at that. We can do away with some lines. Well, let's look at this. And so, I mean, things they come in stages. So
I think I've heard the term creeping incrementalism.
There you go.
It's about right.
Okay.
I'm glad you can.
That is not the intent of this.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Are there any other questions or comments from the public on this section during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. What is the will of the board?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Great job.
Next is the committees, the first one being the Finance, Commissioner Morgan and Duda. And since Commissioner Morgan isn't here, Commissioner Duda, do you have anything you want to add?
No. As presented, I believe we are going to be trying to schedule a meeting here in the very short future, but have not made that happen yet.
Okay. Next, we'll move to the criminal justice. There is one item, and Commissioner Boyle, chair of the committee.
I'll defer to Mr. Vavasso. I can see you. Come on down.
Good morning, Ken.
Ken Bavasso for the Sheriff's Office, here to talk about the HIDA grant, if anyone has any questions.
You know, I do, naturally. I had one when I read this. There's a lease, almost $9,000 to lease a car. What's that all about?
It's $9,000 to lease a car that would be used by the deputy assigned to the HIDA unit
But I mean, don't we
over
have,
an 18-month period.
but don't we have a slew of cars that we could use? I mean,
Well, we changed them off because once they get burned, they're only good for a month or so. And you have to change it off because they get identified rather quickly.
Yeah, but don't you have a fleet of vehicles that you've picked up from drug busts? How many cars do you think the...
I don't know.
I'm sure it's just more of this.
We do pick up cars, but it takes a long time before they're released by the marshal's office, if they're released. If there's money owed on them, they wind up going back to the bank.
I think it's just another case of the federal government going berserk on spending money. They don't need $9,000 to lease a car, or whatever it is. But I'm going to vote for it. But I think it's wasteful.
Any other questions or comments
Do we have a
on?
motion?
Excuse me?
There's no motion yet?
No, not yet.
Move for the approval?
Second.
Please vote.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I did have breakfast. I'm not just being ornery today.
Don't eat breakfast.
I know, that's right.
That is Wheaties.
Motion passes.
Thanks, Ken.
Next is the Human Resources Committee. The first is the weekly personnel report from Civil Service. That is as presented. If anyone has any questions or comments. Seeing none, the next is the weekly CAO report on staff assaults.
Nothing to report.
Next is the legislative issues, and we should have that within the next, probably the first week of October to discuss. So again, if there's anything anyone would like added to or for us to discuss, please send those forward. We do have need for an executive session for labor negotiations. But before we go into that, I would ask that we take a moment of silence. There has been great loss of life in our nation here recently. Not only does it happen on a daily basis, that seems to not get a whole lot of attention, but the recent events in Colorado are devastating. The most recent event in Washington at the Navy Yard, tragic. And so I think what it causes me to do is sit back for a minute and think about what is important. And I would ask that we take a moment of silence and remember those communities, those families, everyone affected by those tragedies that we're seeing occur on a daily basis, as well as the big tragedies in the last few months. Thank you. Executive session for Labor negotiations,
So, do we make a motion?
did we, no, we haven't had a motion yet.
So move.
And then, is there a second?
Second.
And we do have today, after executive session, and we adjourn, as a board, we do have committee meetings as the Criminal Justice Committee meeting, which is at 11 over at United Way at the Midlands in their first floor boardroom. Then we have community service meeting at 2:30 up in room 903 on Thursday, September 19th. Sorry, not today, sorry. Thursday, September 19th, 2:30 in room 903. Commissioner Boyle?
I don't want to throw my 2 cents in on the Criminal Justice Committee meeting across the street, United Way. I hope everyone can attend, and everyone, citizens are invited as well to participate. We have a contract, Douglas County has a contract with United Way to place people on jobs instead of sending them to the correctional facility, and it's really successful, and I'd like everyone to hear about it and maybe some ways we can expand it. So it's it really is hand in hand with what the Department of Corrections is doing, and it is working extremely well. So I hope you'll come over and give your opinion and make suggestions, as well as anyone else who can attend. Would be great. Across the street at the United Way building.
At 11.
At 11 o'clock.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Was there a motion and a second?
Yeah.
Please vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
A civil authority has issued a required monthly test for the following counties/areas. Nebraska, at 9:57 a.m. on Sep 17th, 2013, effective until 10:42 a.m. Message from IPOSCAP. This is a required monthly test of the broadcast stations and cable systems of Nebraska. This is a test of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System through Nebraska Emergency Management Agency. Equipment that can quickly warn you during emergencies is being tested. If this had been an actual emergency, official messages would have followed the alert tone. The Nebraska EAS system serves the state of Nebraska area. This concludes this test of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning Emergency Alert System. This is only a test.
Second,
Second?
please vote.
Yes. Oh, I got it.
Yes. Oh, got it.
Motion passes.
Say, Catherine, I wanted to...
America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shine.